Hello and welcome to the newsroom. Our top story for the hour. US Special Envoy for Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, says a deal to end the Ukraine war is now within reach. Kellogg, who is due to step down in January, said the negotiations were in the last quote-unquote 10 meters, which is the most difficult stage of any peace effort. He said the two issues are still not settled. One is the future of Ukraine's Donbass region. The other is the control of the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, the largest in Europe, which remains under Russian occupation. He said resolving these points could unlock a broader settlement. Kellogg described the human cost as horrific, estimating over 2 million casualties combined, though neither side confirms figures. This comes as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that he had a long and substantive phone call with US President Donald Trump's Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and his son-in-law Jared Kushner. Now joining us for this discussion is my colleague Meher Karuna. Meher, what more can you tell us about this?
Well, yes, Thomas, a lot of developments taking place in regards to the Russia-Ukraine peace talks that are taking place. Developments are taking place every day. Now, US Special Envoy to Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, has made some strong remarks. He said that the Ukraine war is now within reach. He's also said that now the peace talks are almost 10 meters left. And this shows some real progress in the negotiations that are taking place between the three sides, Russia, US and Ukraine. Now, he said that the last steps towards the peace talks is the most crucial and the most difficult ones. And he's also noted that two problems still remain. One is the Donbass region and the second is the Zaporizhye power plant issue. Now he's also noted that about 2 million people have been killed on both sides and neither of the sides are confirming the casualties. Both Russia and Ukraine are not commenting on the casualties. These developments have taken place as yesterday Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, he spoke to US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and US President Donald Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, and he had a long substantive call based on the US-Ukraine talks that have taken place. Now, there were 3-day discussions that took place in Florida, Miami, in the United States, and the 3-day conversations between the US and Ukraine delegations. They were majorly based on revising the Trump's 28-point peace plan. Now, Trump's peace plan earlier had 28 points but has now been revised, and we have comments from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who said that the new plan, the revised plan looks better, but he's also emphasized on the red lines. And for Ukraine, the territorial issue still remains the most important. He says that Donbass issue is very crucial and Ukraine will not negotiate until this prospect is cleared. Now we have comments coming in from all sides. Now Russia, Putin is accusing the European leaders of hindering the peace talks, and he was earlier this week, he was on his 2-day state visit to India, where he's also thanked and appreciated US President Donald Trump's efforts towards negotiating and brokering the peace between Russia and Ukraine. On the other hand, Zelensky has also expressed fear this week. He said that he fears that the US side will lose interest in the peace negotiations and brokering the peace. On the other hand, the Ukrainian foreign minister has also commented, saying that Putin is wasting the world's time. Now, these are some strong comments coming in from the Ukrainian foreign minister. From the United States side, Trump is saying that there are some real chances of reaching a peace deal, and he's saying that he's called the Ukraine, the situation in Ukraine a mess, but he's also said that it is tough to negotiate, but he's showing some real progress in the negotiations. And all these diplomatic moves come as on the ground, both sides, Russia and Ukraine, are targeting each other, and drone attacks and missiles are being launched on both the sides. and diplomacy is at a speed, and Washington is driving the process, and we'll bring you all the developments as and when they happen. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Meher. We now move over to the United States for some comments from former US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. And she said that she's, quote unquote, quite concerned about US President Donald Trump's second-term foreign policy, arguing it marks a shift away from what she called core American values. Speaking on a panel at the Doha Forum in Qatar, she accused Trump of effectively supporting Russia's invasion of Ukraine by rarely criticizing Russian President Vladimir Putin and pressuring Kiev towards a ceasefire deal that she said would leave it further vulnerable to Russian aggression. Let's take a listen in to her comments.
Well, for example, supporting Russia's invasion of Ukraine, both in an affirmative way by very rarely criticizing Putin for the brutal war that he has waged on the Ukrainian people, and then, attempting to try to coerce the Ukrainians into accepting a negotiated ceasefire and peace deal that would be, by any objective measure, leaving them vulnerable to further Russian activity. Remember, Russia has been in Ukraine since 2014, so this didn't start in 2022.
Now, at the same forum, Donald Trump Jr. has said that the American public has, quote, no appetite to write checks to fund Kiev and help Ukraine sustain its ongoing war with its neighboring Russia. He has further remarked that Europe was not focusing on a workable plan, but only waiting for Russia to go bankrupt. Let's take a listen in to some of his comments that he made at the forum.
I don't think Ukraine is going to be abandoned, but I think for years, again, it was the same thing as the last answer, which is, well, we want to attack Russia, we want to do this, well, when it comes to actually writing a check ourselves, no, the US is going to do it. The American public doesn't have an appetite for that. So there was no appetite for that, but that didn't stop a Republican Party from saying it's the #1 issue. It's not, and we actually have to listen to the will of those people. So we want peace, we want to stop the death, but I even saw that yesterday where, on this very stage, what was the idea for Europe, who is on the border of Ukraine, who has much more at stake if this happens? Well, our plan is to win economically when pressed on the issue. How are you going to do that? Well, we're just going to wait for Russia to go bankrupt. That's not a plan.
Donald Trump Jr.'s quotes in Doha there. But earlier today, there were reports about the Kremlin welcoming a move initiated by Donald Trump, which said that it would stop calling Russia a direct threat. Of course, here on NewsX World, we'll bring you all the updates coming out of that conflict. We now move on and over to the United Kingdom, where hundreds of protesters gathered in the capital, urging the UK government not to allow China to build a vast new embassy complex in London. The site, once home to the historic Royal Mint, was purchased by Beijing in 2018 for a reported $327 million. But years of delays have stalled approval, with the latest decision now set for January the 20th. Demonstrators say the proposed embassy could become a hub for surveillance and intimidation, particularly targeting Hong Kongers living in the United Kingdom. One doctor, originally from Hong Kong, warned that activists fear the compound could not just be used for espionage, but even for unlawful detentions. The government has not commented on the renewed concerns, but campaigners are urging the UK government to block the project entirely. Let's listen in to what protesters on the scene had to say.
And we are concerned that the new embassy in London is going to become a center of espionage, but also a center of illegal arrests for Hong Kongers like me who have been involved in anti-Chinese demonstrations and anti-Chinese protests in the past and also at present, as well as Hong Kongers who have come across to Britain to seek refuge since the 2019 demonstration and the suppression afterwards as well.
I worry about the whole UK in a sense because the Chinese government is doing everything to infiltrate into everybody, including Hong Konger or anybody who actually come from the mainland China too. So, or anybody, they just spied on anybody.
Now, next in the news, some controversial comments from newly entitled Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. He said he would have made the same call in ordering a controversial follow-up strike on a suspected drug boat in the Caribbean that killed 2 survivors. Hegseth made these comments while speaking to a defence industry forum and reiterated his claim that he was not present for the duration of the military operation. Hegseth denied that he had given the initial order to kill everyone on board the boat and said that a decision had not yet been made on whether to release the full tape of the strike. Hegseth also noted that the United States will resume nuclear weapons testing and modernize its nuclear triad on an equal basis as others, alluding to other nuclear powers like Russia and China. Let's take a listen into the statements.
And frankly, there was a, 10 strikes later, there was a semi-submersible that I think folks here, meaning a submarine. You don't go fishing on a submarine full of drugs. And in that particular case, the first strike didn't take it out. And a couple guys jumped off and swam, from what I understand, a ways away. When we struck the submarine a second time, it sunk. And then you had 2 people that you had to go get. And we had the ability to go get them. We gave them back to their host countries. That's a story that's already been out in the public. So we didn't change our protocol, it was just a different circumstance.
We stay in North America next, and Canada's Air Transat is going to suspend flights between December the 8th and 9th following a 72-hour strike notice from Alpha, the union representing the company's 700 pilots. Meanwhile, the Canadian leisure carrier called the strike notice premature given the progress at the bargaining table and says that it had proposed compromises including a 59% salary increase over 5 years and improvements to working conditions. Air Transat is working with the union to reach a deal and avoid a walkout, but will fully halt operations by December the 9th to prevent passengers and crews from being stranded. This comes as Transat, the airline's operating company, is struggling to turn a profit and reduce debt incurred after a taxpayer bailout early in the COVID-19 pandemic. The company is also facing a battle for the control of its boardroom, led by disgruntled investor Pierre-Carl Pléadu. Now, next we turn once again to North America, and in Brooklyn, hundreds of people are showing up for an anti-ICE training session as fears grow over possible immigration raids in New York. The event was organized by the Hands Off New York coalition, which urged people to record every ICE encounter to keep agents accountable. Participants say that the training made them feel empowered, with some calling recent viral videos of ICE operations basically kidnappings. Many attendees say that they just want to protect their neighborhoods and their city. Organizers told the crowds that documenting raids, forming groups and showing up in numbers can make a real difference. According to them, the goal is to channel fear and anger into the community's action and stand together if raids increase. Let's listen in.
I would like to be able to support my community. I love living in New York. I would like to continue to live in New York. I can't imagine living anywhere else. So I need to protect it. We'll see. I haven't blown a whistle in a very long time, since like gym class in high school. So I have this one. I have one for my roommate back at home.
And I think here in the city, even though a lot of us agree, a lot of us aren't sure how to act yet. It's really important to me because I feel like we can do it. And I feel like it's going to take all of us. And I would rather funnel my fear and anger and sadness into building something joyful and hopeful and building a city and a country that we never even dreamed of.
For our next story, we turn to West Asia, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, while addressing a joint press conference with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz in Jerusalem today, has said that he will be meeting with US President Donald Trump later this month and hold further discussions on initiating the second phase of the Gaza peace plan. Let's take a listen in to the statements.
And we discussed, of course, how to bring an end to the Hamas rule in Gaza, because that's an essential part of ensuring a different future for Gaza and a different future for us facing Gaza. So now opportunities for peace are there. We tend to exploit them. I'm going to discuss them with President Trump when I meet him later on this week.
Well, meanwhile, speaking at the presser alongside the Israeli PM, the German Chancellor has said that both countries are collectively working towards a new Middle East where Israel gets its due recognition. Moreover, he stressed that the two-state plan is possibly the best solution for both Palestine and Israel's future, and that this solution can only be achieved through peaceful negotiations. Let's hear what he said further on the German-Israeli relationship.
Des langen Krieges hat uns aber das Vorgehen der israelischen Regierung auch in ein gewisses Dilemma geführt. Deutschland muss für Israels Sicherheit einstehen. Und Deutschland muss für Menschenwürde und Recht einstehen, die den Kern unserer Verfassung, gerade nach Shoah und Weltkrieg, ausmachen. Als Land im Krieg, als demokratischer Rechtsstaat musste sich Israel in seinem militärischen Vorgehen eben auch am Völkerrecht messen lassen.
We stay in West Asia next, and Iran's foreign ministry says that 55 Iranians deported from the United States will return to their home country in the coming days, in the second such deportation under President Trump's immigration crackdown. In September, US officials said the US had identified about 400 Iranians to be deported, with the first flight carrying 120 making its way to Tehran via Qatar's capital. The transfers mark an unusual moment of coordination between the two nations at loggerheads over Iran's nuclear program, which Tehran says is purely civilian, but Washington asserts it's aimed at building a nuclear weapon. Let's take a listen into the statements.
هر ایرانی هر جای دنیا که باشه آزاد هست هر زمان که بخواهد به ایران برگرده. دفتر حفاظت منافع ما تسهیلات لازم رو فراهم کرده و ظرف روزهای آینده حدود 50 نفر 55 نفر از این اتباع ایرانی به ایران باز خواهند گشت.
We move next over to East Asia, and Japan's Defense Minister Shirojimo Kiyozomi and his Australian counterpart Richard Marles have met today in Tokyo and have agreed upon deepening their security cooperation amid China's increasingly aggressive actions in the East and South China Seas. At the meeting, the Japanese Defense Minister has confirmed about both nations making progress towards concluding a contract by the end of this fiscal year, that is through next March. Now, this contract revolves around Australia's Navy plan to introduce an upgraded version of the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Forces Magomi-class frigate into their fleet, which is a versatile warship sailing vessel. Additionally, the Japanese Defense Minister has also talked about yesterday's incident where a Chinese military aircraft locked radar onto their Air SDF fighter jets, disturbing peace in the region. Let's now take a listen in to the Defense Minister's comments made during the meeting.
中国によって行われましたレーダー照射2回、これにつきましては、このような行動は航空機の安全な飛行に必要な範囲を超える危険な行為であって、中国側には強く抗議し、再発防止を厳重に申し入れます。
simply say that we do not want to see any change to the status quo across the Taiwan Straits. In general terms, Minister Koizumi and I spoke about the way in which Australia and Japan can work together to assert the rules-based order and provide for the peace and stability of the Indo-Pacific.
Now, Germany's Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul is scheduled to visit China tomorrow, which will mark his very first trip to the country. This comes at a time when trade tensions between Beijing and EU countries remain intense, particularly in the matters of chips, mineral steel and electric vehicles. Let's listen in to what Wadephul said about the discussions that he could be holding during his upcoming trip to China.
Gleichzeitig werde ich Themen wie Handelsbeschränkungen und Überkapazitäten ansprechen. Sie bereiten deutschen Unternehmen große Sorgen. Ich bin überzeugt, dass Deutschland und China beide ein Interesse an einem stabilen globalen Handel haben. Unternehmen brauchen dafür Kalkulierbarkeit und Sicherheit. Auf Dauer ist das nur gegeben, wenn alle die Regeln eines offenen und fairen internationalen Handels einhalten. Aber jeder
Next over to the Vatican, and Pope Leo called on the international community today to support communities in South and Southeast Asia hit by recent natural disasters. He reflected on his recent visits to Turkey and Lebanon, saying interfaith meetings show that dialogue can foster peace. The Pope stressed that cooperation between the religions demonstrates that lasting peace is possible even in regions affected by conflict. Let's take a listen in to the Pope.
Sono vicino ai popoli del sud e del sud-est asiatico, duramente provati dai recenti disastri naturali. Prego per le vittime, per le famiglie che piangono i loro cari e per quanti portano soccorso. Esorto la comunità internazionale e tutte le persone di buona volontà a sostenere con gesti di solidarietà i fratelli e le sorelle di quelle regioni. Cari fratelli e sorelle, quanto è avvenuto nei giorni scorsi in Turchia e Libano ci insegna che la pace è possibile e che i cristiani in dialogo con gli uomini e le donne di altre fedi e culture possono contribuire a costruirla. Non lo dimentichiamo. La pace è possibile.
Next, we move to the Indo-Pacific, and according to government data, the combined death toll across Indonesia's 3 provinces on the Sumatra island due to recent flooding and landslides has now reached 916, while 274 others remain missing. In the event of the worsening crisis, the local officials on the island have now called on the national government in Jakarta to declare the recent series of flooding and landslides a state of national emergency, which could help free up additional funds for rescue and relief efforts. In Indonesia's Aceh Taiming district, which is a particularly isolated area, people reportedly struggled to get clean water. However, heavy equipment and food supplies were able to access the area last Thursday, which brought the batch of relief for its residents. Let's take a listen in from that district.
Alhamdulillah kami bisa dapat air bersih karena selama ini kami lupa yang kami masak. Air bersih susah kali sudah sampai 9 hari kami tidak dapat air bersih. Baru inilah kami dapat air bersih dan bisa kami masak dengan sehat untuk keluarga kami di pengungsian. Dari bantuan-bantuan dari sanak saudara yang memberi, itu pun kami ada pernah makan sudah beras terendam, kami cuci seadanya dengan air lumpur, air yang keruh itu, air sungai itu, ya udah kami masak, itulah yang kami makan walaupun rasanya agak asam-asam gitu.
Now with that, it is a wrap on the newsroom. Keep watching NewsX World for more international updates.